Hello and welcome to the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, helping everyday runners fuel better, run smarter, and recover faster so you can reach your full performance potential. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchek, dietitian, fitness coach, and a fellow runner too. As the owner of Stephanie Natchek Performance Nutrition, I've spent the last 10 years helping runners learn to fuel their bodies, level up their running performance, and establish healthier relationships with food and exercise. If you're ready to reconnect with your love of running, then let's get started on today's episode. Okay, so everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, where I am really excited to be sitting down for a talk all about running shoes with the perfect person to teach us everything we need to know about running shoes, the owner of City Park Runners here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Jonathan Torchia. Did I say your last name right?
Well, Torchia, but close enough. No one, I guess, no, you didn't, but
Right.
Torchia, Italian background.
All right. I know the struggle. Mine's Ukrainian and I have a silent H at the beginning. So no one ever knows how to say mine. So I definitely, I get the struggle. So thank you so much for being here. It's wonderful to be chatting with you today. I'm really excited for everything you have to share with us. So I want to start with your origin story. I want to hear more about you. I want to hear about your business and how you came to become the owner of City Park Runners.
So I've been involved in the running community going on 12, 13 years now, per se, big timeline. But it was about 12 years ago that I started the WFPS run, the annual half marathon, 10K and 5K in October. From there, that took on a whole entire life of its own and made me fall more and more in love with running, my whole weight loss journey, and becoming a runner at that time in my life, and really getting myself immersed in the running community. And that was with starting Winnipeg Run Club 7-8 years ago. That was with doing some run coaching. That was with putting on run clinics for anyone out in the community kind of thing. So everything was run, being a race director of this large scale event. And my actual career at the time was being a paramedic. So I did that for about 13 years total. But I knew that all my passions and sense of my identity and who I was really belonged in running and the community and that kind of stuff. And it was very evident in everything I was doing with race directing and run coaching and run clubbing and run leading, all that kind of stuff. So nonetheless, fast forward all these years of doing all that stuff kind of in the background as I was doing a paramedic job, I was looking for a career change or something different. And an opportunity came up to purchase City Park Runners. It will all be 3 years ago, this January 1st. So head first into it, never owned a business, never worked retail, never really knew anything about owning a business at all. With the little side hustles I was doing, I mean, not full-blown business, it was little side projects. So nonetheless, dove into this brand new career, this brand new business, but it felt at a point, or still does in the sense that it felt so natural because it was tying in everything that I was already doing and on the community side and like that, being out there in the public kind of side. Of course, then, comes the whole thing of actually going, okay, well, I got to learn everything about food and products and how to function a business and how to keep a business open and lively and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, all that came with time. And, here we are 3 years calling into it. And, we've broken records over records over records that we set ourselves and from previous ownership. And, we're not looking back. I mean, we're growing at a rapid pace here. And, lots of exciting stuff on the horizon for City Park Runners.
Amazing. What a cool story to go from and then starting the run, which is the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic run, and then to have that transition into owning a running store. It's just such an interesting journey. So we're here today to talk about running shoes and, to really give people a lot of information and kind of clarity and context around choosing the right pair of running shoes. Because I think that that's something that I see so often in all of the online spaces, the Facebook groups for runners and stuff like that, is always people looking for shoe recommendations, shoe advice, which, as I'm sure we're going to learn today, it's not always as simple as what works for me, what works for you. So give us running shoes 101, the rundown on, what are some of like the major categories of running shoes, and maybe just some like key features of some of the major types of shoes you can find on the market.
For sure. And yeah, you nailed it on the head there with saying that what may work for me may not work for you. And that's like the biggest thing that we tell people is just because someone recommends the Asics Kayano on a Facebook forum or a Google forum that you read up on, what's a
Yeah.
really good shoe, doesn't mean that shoe's for you. Uh, and we see it daily in our shop. Uh, and we see it dozens of times over and over and over. And that's no joke. So with shoes, it's very particular to the person, to their foot strike, the use of the shoe. But first and foremost is trying to understand and figure out you, that individual who's looking for the shoes, first, your size, length, and width, and then also how your foot strikes, whether you pronate or supinate or you have a nice neutral gait. It's one thing to be a heel striker. It's one thing to be running on your forefoot. It's one thing to be mid to forefoot. But the biggest thing is when you supinate or you pronate. And what those are basic layman's terms for everyone listening is whether your foot rolls out on the outside of your foot or you roll it on the inside of your foot when you're striking around and you're turning over your feet, walking or running. And every single customer that comes into the store, we take our time, and that's what sets us apart from any other place in the city, where we watch the person walk back and forth, we assess their gait, we measure their foot, we measure their width, we use that old school machine thing that you put your foot in and we slide the dials back and forth that, people kind of joke and laugh about, but we use that on a day-to-day basis. It's the number one tool in the shop because we really need to get dialed in the size, the width, and your foot type. Then from there, it opens up the big conversation of, okay, are you going to be running? Are you going to be walking? Are you going to be inside, outside, on the trails, on dry pavement, treadmill? What kind of runs are you going to be doing this particular shoe? Are you going to be sprinting around a track really fast? Or are you going to be out doing your long, slow runs for 2-3 hours where, you maybe want a higher cushion shoe? So in this first kind of call it like 2-3 minute survey of the person that walked into our store, we can really paint a really big picture of call him John Smith or Stacy Smith, and we can understand that John may need a stability shoe in a 9 wide, and he's using a shoe for high mileage running. Great. Well, let's now hone in on exactly what the possibility of shoes could be for him, kind of thing, for her. Now, shoes, all manufacturers, whether it's Asics or Brooks or Saucony or Ultra, all these different brands out there, New Balance, they all make shoes based into these categories for people who need stability or neutral shoe, or people that need, it's called a motion control shoe, so there's not really a foot to rotate left or right. So dependent on how not call it bad, but how much you do pronate or supinate, or if you are neutral, all these are really, really important things that we have to know before picking out random shoes. So the biggest thing for us in our business at City Park Runners is we're a sit and fit business. Like we take our time, come in. We don't really want you going to the wall and grabbing 7 different shoes based on just color and price because they could all be in very different categories. And that happens often where someone will come in, they'll just gravitate towards a certain color. We've all done that in the past. I feel like, oh, look at these really
I know I
flashy.
have.
Right, exactly. Look at these flashy Asics on sale at Sport Check for $69. Well, they're probably not the right shoes for you. And most of the time they're not. And we see it often enough where people come into the store and go, oh, I just bought these shoes a month ago. My feet are killing me, or my shins are killing me, or my knees are hurting. Okay, well, let's measure you up. Let's watch you walk back and forth and figure out which category of shoe you should be in. And then you look at the shoe that they got on their own term, and it's completely the wrong shoe. Well, that happens often, more times than people want to admit to, believe it or not. So that's the biggest thing that we have to do is first figure out the category of shoe to put you into. Yeah, from there.
Yeah, okay. So what would be the difference, like in terms of the specifics of the shoe between, you mentioned like motion control, neutral, and I can't remember what the other one was that you said. What are like, what's
Stability.
the difference in the shoe? Stability. Yeah. So like
Yeah.
what's the difference in the actual shoe?
So the actual difference in the shoe is essentially the structure of the shoe and how now the last of the shoe is called like essentially the bottom of the shoe, the platform of the shoe. And that's essentially the structural part of the shoe. All the shoes may look like the exact same on the wall. They all, kind of look the
Mm-hmm.
same, but
Yep.
certain shoes have built-in structure to not allow your foot to pronate in and roll in. It's called like a guide rail or a sidebar that puts your foot back into that neutral position. Now, I guess it is kind of hard to explain, but when we do go over all the options in the store, when we're sitting there in front of us, we go over this and we show on the shoes, okay, well, this is the guide rail that's going to prevent your foot from rolling in. So a lot of the times, as an example, say we need a stability shoe for a customer in front of us, we'll bring out however many options. We have 8 total in the store, but we'll bring out a couple at a time, not to overwhelm the person. We'll try them on. We'll fit, we'll feel their forefoot, make sure it's feeling good in there. The man toe space is all good in there. But then most important, we'll watch the person now walk with the shoes on back and forth and see if that shoe is correcting the gait that was allowing the foot to roll in or roll out. And often
Oh,
enough,
okay.
we find the solve right off the hop and go, wow, when you're walking barefoot or in your socks, 10 yards out and 10 yards back towards us, your feet are rolling in. In this shoe, you probably feel it. It's not at all. I'm like, wow, yeah, that's actually happening. My feet aren't rolling at all. It feels really good. I never had that feeling before where I don't feel my knee buckling in kind of thing around kind of position. So
Yep.
it's, I know we're just in in the business of selling shoes and that kind of stuff. But it's funny because some of the reactions we get from our customers and that we help, they're like, whoa, this is like new age science, but really it's just being properly assessed and getting, proper fitting.
Okay.
And that's one thing that we really, really pride ourselves on at City Park Runners. And that's with every single person, is going that extra step and going one-on-one the whole way through, not just hucking down a couple pairs of shoes in front of them and go, well, I'll try these on and let us know how they feel. And they'll come back in half an hour kind of thing. Like, we sit there, touch
Yeah,
your feet,
yeah.
look at your feet, assess the arches, the whole 9 yards. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And then what's kind of like, the other thing that I see a lot is sort of the difference between, shoes that have a ton of cushioning, like the ones that are, these really like big, bulky kind of things, like they just, look like moon boots on people's feet,
hmm
all the
hmm
way down to, of course, the shoes that there's nothing to them, and more of that like barefoot kind of running. So
right,
obviously the difference there is going to be in the cushioning and the amount of cushioning, but are there any other kind of features between those two that would help someone kind of know which is most appropriate for them?
for sure. And that's a really great question. It's funny, like, I'm glad you say this stuff because, for runners that are listening, you can probably see and understand the trends. Let's say 7, 8 years ago, call it 10 years ago, it was like in racing shoes, it was like this minimalist race flat. There wasn't much to the shoe. There wasn't carbon fiber plated shoes. There wasn't this big cushy stuff tight on the shoes. Um, for a racing flat, it was literally a flat shoe that was minimal and you had like max feeling of like your forefoot and your feet to the ground. Now introduce Hoka into the market many years ago. And the Hoka Bondi, as an example, is that Hoka shoe that everyone sees out there, and it's extremely popular. It's the number one selling shoe in the store right now. It has a massive, big cushion heel, big fat stack of cushion. And all shoe brands and shoe companies are following the same trend that Hoka set out years ago. Big cushion, lightweight. And now if you look across the board, every single brand's following New Balance, Saucony, On, um, Asics. They're all following that trend, going to the big, chunky cushion shoe. Now, if you saw someone running
Yeah.
a marathon or half marathon or any kind of race distance, say 10 years ago in Hoka Bondi, you would have said that thing, the moon, because that person wearing on the foot with a monster shoe. But
Yeah.
now, that's like
Yeah.
what people want and are looking for is that nice high cushion shoe. Okay, and let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages, or the pros and cons, or what it means to have a high cushion shoe versus a mid cushion shoe. Essentially, a high cushion shoe, what it's meant for is, taking the impact on your ankles, your knees, your hips. If you're going to be out there for those long runs, 2, 3, 4 hour runs, surely you'd want a higher cushion shoe on your foot than something more minimal where you're feeding the pounding into the ground and taking the impact, right? Taking the brunt of the hits. So it's always having one of those things in your toolbox. A high cushion shoe is great for those long runs where you're going to be on your feet for multiple hours. A mid cushion shoe could be used for those quick 5Ks, 10Ks, those tempo runs, those runs around the track. It all really depends. And I will say if you can have these different shoe options in your toolbox as a runner, the more successful you may be because now you have different options to pick from when you know what you're actually going to be using for that day, right? So and then
Mm-hmm.
introduced the whole carbon fiber trend. That's kind of Nike kicked in about 5-6 years ago, pre-pandemic there with the carbon fiber shoe that Kipchoge went attempted to go sub 2 with, and then really from there carbon fiber just took off. And then all the brands, all the companies made
Yeah,
carbon
yeah.
fiber racing shoes. But something to note about that, even all these carbon fiber shoes that are super fast, super responsive, super lightweight, are big, chunky cushion shoes. They're not like a minimal racing flat. They're big heel stacks. They're big, chunky cushions. And even for these pros and these elites, even we don't sell Adidas or Nike in the shop, but nonetheless, you look at these people, this Boston Marathon last week, or 2 weekends ago, or 2 weeks ago, London Marathon this past weekend, and you look at the top shoes for some of these people, they're all these big, chunky cushion shoes, but with carbon plates in them. So that's sort of the trend we're on right
Mm-hmm,
now.
mm-hmm.
It's higher, more cushion the better, more cushion the better, more cushion the better. Um, Within the
Yeah, okay.
stability, yeah, and even within the stability category, you can still be in a high cushion stability shoe, or you could be in a stability shoe that's a little bit firmer. And that's really an assessment on how much stability you actually need um, in the within the shoe. So yeah,
Yeah. So it sounds to me like you would actually recommend having different shoes for different types of workouts. So like would you recommend that a runner have, a specific pair that they wear for those long runs that have more cushioning and then a different pair that they're wearing for their speed sessions? Like let's say somebody's training for a marathon. They've got a mix of easy runs, kind of shorter easy runs. They've got their long run, they've got their 1 or 2 speed sessions a week. Would you say that person should have 2 or maybe 3 different pairs of shoes in their rotation?
absolutely. And we always say that to people. Like at the end of the day, we can't sit there and spend people's money and be like, well, you should have 2, 3 pairs of shoes because the last thing we ever want to do is instill like
Yeah.
fear or this perception that, oh my God, like what am I getting myself into? Running shouldn't be this expensive or running is too much for me. But it does open up
Yeah.
that big conversation that we have with our customers going, look, this shoe here is great for those long runs. Uh, Something to consider might be having a second pair of shoes to have into rotation. And that's A, to even out the wear in your shoes, but also B, to have a different use for a shoe. So yeah, exactly what you said. There's high cushion shoes for the long runs on the weekend, and then maybe a lower profile cushion shoe or neutral shoe category, whatever, for those midweek runs, those 6 mile runs, those 8 mile runs, those tempo runs. And then, okay, let's even open up a bigger box. Let's have a race day shoe. Well, let's talk about carbon then. Then you have a carbon shoe
Mhm.
just for your race day shoe. You never really want to train in a carbon shoe for all your training runs. It's a carbon fiber plate underneath your forefoot. So it's not the most comfortable thing to always have on your foot, right? For races, obviously, that's what
Okay,
people want.
okay.
They're going after because that propels you forward. It takes the energy that you're putting into your step and bounces you forward even more. So um, it's one of those things there. It depends on the day. Again, then it's all kind of like sort of that survey and question that we ask, a mouthful question that we ask people. What are you going to be using the shoe for? And then we can gather the information from there and,
Yeah.
in the category and all that kind of stuff. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, one of the things that we always say is like nothing new on race day. So if someone does have those carbon fiber plated shoes, we want them to be spending some like I would assume like if I were coaching someone that we're going to be using a specific race day shoe, I would want them to be using them sometimes before the actual day of the race, not just
of
strapping them on for the
course,
first time at the start line, but like
yeah.
how much or how often would you kind of integrate that into your plan, I suppose?
Yeah, and you know what? It kind of follows, I would say, the same suit of like the whole 80-20, 80% easy, 20% hard for training. Kind of the rule that
Yeah.
I found, right? I would say the same thing for those carbon fiber shoes in the sense of you can wear that carbon fiber shoe for your track workouts, your quick 5K, 10K, those tempo runs,
Okay.
those 200s,
Yeah.
400s, 800s, 1 mile repeats, that kind of stuff. It'd be great to wear a carbon shoe because, again, more energy you put into that shoe, the faster it's going to propel you forward. So that could be your trial and error, not trial and error, but your times to break in the shoe or to wear them before the race. Because like you said, you don't want to just pull out the brand new pair of shoes on Sunday morning of your big event and oh my gosh, these aren't feeling too good. But with that being said,
Yeah. Or I don't know how to run in these.
exactly. That was, you just cut the ice right on my mouth. That's exactly it. I don't know how to run these. I don't think this feels so different. So, because it does really feel way different than a traditional running shoe. So people may get that whole mental thing. We know running's like 80% mental in their head already race morning before the racing started about their shoes. Oh my gosh, this feels so different. I can't do this. How am I going to do it? You know? So it's one of those things that definitely try on the shoes beforehand. The one really nice thing at our shop, we have the treadmill in the store, and we see it more and more and way more now than ever that people are trying on the shoes in the store and hopping on the treadmill for a minute or two and actually feeling what it feels like to run in that shoe at the race pace or training pace or whatever. You can tell quite a bit in those first few moments or minutes actually running in the shoe and turning over if it's pushing up on your arch or you feel a tight spot by your pinky toe or maybe your big toe's pointing up too much in this one footbed. But all those little things, and again, it goes into that whole purchasing process. And we see it more and more where people are feeling really confident in their shoe choices and their purchases right from the get go. And having that treadmill in store makes a huge difference for us and for the customers as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like I know if I go to, say or something and I'm picking out pairs of shoes, you're kind of you walk back and forth in front of the shoe section a couple of times, but it's like I don't know how this is going to feel when I run. Everything feels comfortable for standing around and maybe walking 10 feet, but it's a very different ball game to actually run in a pair of shoes and also to run far in a pair of shoes. And it's, such a great point that you mentioned about having like something with more cushioning for those longer distances and then having a different pair of shoes for your shorter runs because the big kind of maximalist type of shoes really did come out of the growing ultra running community. And so it makes sense that, for those longer distances and for being on your feet for hours and hours and hours, it makes more sense that you're going to want something a little bit different than when you're doing just a short fast run. And then of course you get the longevity out of both of those pairs of shoes too, because you're not wearing them all the time.
Right. And that's a big thing that people may not know or understand, but it's called like the recoil of the cushioning. So if you wear the exact same pair of shoes every single day, all you're doing is constantly breaking down inside. You don't see it outside, but you're breaking down those little pockets of foam and then cushioning. And imagine a bunch of bubble wrap, and you're popping every single time you're stepping down and running. Day after day, you're popping all the bubbles, and you don't allow the shoe to actually recoil. And it's a thing. It's a thing out there, allowing the cushion in the shoe to recoil. So that's another thing that we tell people that makes a big difference is allowing that shoe to air out again or come back to full form instead of just every day pounding on the same pair of shoes. So, um, and I mean, we see it more and more on a day-to-day basis at our shop that so many people are wearing running shoes as everyday shoes, whether it's business casual, whether it's their shoes and they go to the grocery store in or walk around the park in or whatever. But every day people are wearing running shoes just because, not just to go run or go to the gym or go for a power walk or walk, whatever kind of thing. So it's also really important, again, to be into a proper fitting pair of shoes. And I can't stress that enough because, I mean, we see it here all the time that they go, wow, you guys have wide shoes? Yeah, of course we have wide shoes. Every single model I carry in the store, we carry in a wide for men's or women's. It's not a thing of like, well, I'll have to see about going down a wide. Like, it's just a standard thing. And you get more and more that people are needing a wider 4-foot shoe and they want a little bit extra space in the toe bag.
Yeah.
So of course
Yeah.
of course we do. I mean, if we didn't, we would be doing a disservice to people, trying to squish their foot into something that's too tight. So,
Yeah.
but that's a learning. That's a learning for the customer. It's a learning for the people who are trying out shoes for the first time and getting that feeling of going, oh wow, these feel so good. Like, I can't believe like this is how good shoes should feel, sort of thing. So
Yeah. So basically, it's good to have a few different pairs in rotation for your workouts, but also don't have just one single pair of shoes that you wear to run and go to the grocery store and do yard work in and go to work in and you're living in 12 hours a day.
exactly, yeah. That's it. And everyone has grass cutting shoes, and everyone has the gardening shoes, and everybody has the cabin
Totally. Yep.
shoes, right? Like every single person, because you pay, say, a couple $100 for a pair of shoes. Okay, maybe they're not good enough for running anymore and logging all these miles or races in them, but they're good enough for cutting the grass, and they're good enough for playing around with the cabin and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's a good way to, be resourceful and not just kind of throw them out and donate them. But even
Yep.
that comes to a point where, okay, it's okay to cut ties with like a 5-year old, 10-year old pair of shoes that are well past the grass cutting phase, and that um, people think that shoes are meant to last forever. They're not. Newsflash, they're not. Otherwise, all these big
Yeah.
billion-dollar corporations, businesses wouldn't be a business because people wouldn't be buying shoes year over year. Um, you have to
Yeah.
change your shoes out on an annual basis almost. The rule of thumb is 500 miles, 800 kilometers. That's about the shelf life of a shoe. And that all has
Yep.
varying factors on it. How heavy of a foot striker you are, whether you're pounding on dry concrete or on gravel, whether you're ripping through technical trails or basic trails. All these things play factors into it. Um, if you're a 6'6" male who weighs 300 pounds versus a 5'2", say, female who weighs 100 pounds soaking wet, well, who's going to be less wear and tear in the shoe? The 6'6" we have is a way bigger force when they're pounding down on the concrete on their shoe, right? So
Yeah.
think about that as a factor as well. The amount that you're breaking down your shoe, what body composition does for sure play a role. Would we steer someone away from a really low profile shoe if they are um, if they're heavier foot striker putting a lot more force down? Yeah, we will. They say, you know what? Maybe right now in this first month, the shoe will feel really good, but in like 4 months, that cushion's going to break down a lot quicker. Let's just put you in a little bit more cushions so
Yeah.
your body thank you. Your knees are going to feel really good. Your ankles are going to feel really good. Because at the end of the day, as we know, everything roots down to your feet. Feet, ankles,
Yeah.
shins, knees, all the way up to the hips, to the back. Okay? And if you're a bad pair of shoes or a poor pair of shoes or bad condition of shoes, it's a triple effect. I mean, shin splints, I would say 9 or 10 times, shin splints are corrected by corrective shoes or proper shoes for your foot, and then B, not train like a maniac out of the gate. Um, so, I mean, that's one common thing that
Absolutely.
people have if I'm not having proper footwear, shin splints, sore knees, big time.
Yeah. And I think that that's really helpful too, is like, if you do see somebody coming in who is going to have a heavier foot strike or something, to be able to steer that person towards a shoe that they are going to get a better, longer shelf life out of without injuries. I mean, that's really helpful. And it's not like a comment on someone's body or anything like that. It's just like, what is the best shoe for you? Because, bodies and runners come in all different shapes and sizes. And just like we all have different unique feet and different unique goals and all of that kind of stuff, to also, be able to have a lot of different options for shoes that are going to also last you maybe a little bit longer. I think that's really helpful to know.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have a personal favorite pair of shoes or brand of running shoe? And if you do, why? Or if not, why not?
Uh, Great question. And what's the saying? Do's are told, but not as you do or tell. So I love myself. I'm a big Saucony Endorphin Pro fan. I had the Pro 2s, the Pro 3s, and I have the Pro 4s, and another carbon shoe by Saucony. And for me, I fell in love with that shoe. It was my first carbon shoe. I fell in love with it. It was extremely comfortable. It worked for me, my foot strike, my foot style. And I haven't looked back on that shoe. But I have taken my own advice and going, okay, I got to get something else on my feet outside of carbon. Yes, I have the luxury of grabbing a new pair off the shelf every 3, 4, 5 months, however often I did. And I think last year I had like 7 pair on the rotation. But I had to get something outside of carbon. So now, outside of carbon shoe, I run in my Ons, the brand On, and I run the Cloud Go, and I run in the Cloud Eclipse. Both just a nice, one's a high cushion actually, and one's a mid cushion. Shoes by On, and they're just a really nice shoe to have in the rotation outside of my fast shoes that I wear for track, what I wear for my speed workouts. Um, I love that cushion on the foot for those long runs. It's really nice on the ankles and the knees. Um, but yeah, definitely a few, I'm pretty loyal to those two of my favorite sort of brands, I guess you would say, in terms of my personal preference. That works for me. Some people
Yeah.
could try on either one of those and
Yes.
go, or any of them and go, that doesn't work for me. I don't like the feel of this. Okay, it's no problem. And same for me, where I try other brands, and it just doesn't work for my foot. It just doesn't feel as good as
Yeah.
kind of thing. So it's all in personal preference. And that goes back to our very first part of the whole conversation. Is what works for me may not work for you, and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I have a confession. I know on that level that we're supposed to have a bunch of different shoes in our rotation, but I am the runner who does tend to do. I tend to buy a pair and then I'll wear those. Those are my new nice indoor shoes. And I
Mm-hmm.
tend to wear
Mm-hmm.
those probably a little bit too often before I switch them up. So you've inspired me that I will be picking up a couple of pairs and making a rotation. So we had talked a little bit about, you had mentioned going from like the minimalist kind of racing flats and that being a big trend to now seeing that everyone, all the elite runners and a lot of us everyday runners too are definitely getting into more cushioning. Are there any other trends that you're seeing right now in the running shoe industries, or anything else that's kind of coming up other than just the kind of minimalist to maximalist type of switch?
I mean, it's funny because I feel like there's trends on those. Yeah, there's two ends of the spectrum. Because really popular and the growing thing is this whole zero drop, this minimalist, or yeah, zero drop. And what zero drop is, to quickly explain to people, is so you had 40 millimeters in your heel and 40 millimeters in the forefoot, like the front of the shoe. That's considered a zero drop. It can still be a really high cushion, but it's still considered a zero drop. Where it's I'm saying a traditional shoe could be 40 in the back, 32 in the front. Well, that's an 8 millimeter offset or difference. So the whole thing with a zero drop shoe is supposed to promote and emulate just having your bare foot, not your essentially not a drop, not having your heel raised up in the air, whether it's 4 millimeters up
Mm-hmm,
to
mm-hmm.
16 millimeters. So that's a big thing right now. That's I do say it's sort of a trend right now. And the reason why I say it's a trend is because years ago, we can all remember the trend, the era of the five finger shoes, like those glove shoes that you used to put on your feet, and your individual toes went
Yep.
into each little rubber nub of the shoe. Now,
Yep.
the old owner of the store years ago told me he used to have an entire wall of those, and he could never keep them in stock. It's like they were so popular, they were so red hot. There was like all the rave, there's all
Yeah.
over Runner's World magazines. I remember that. I wasn't really into the running scene then, but I remember that phase of life with shoes. And then he said, at one point, as fast as you could like turn the switch off and on, Thief went that fad and couldn't get rid of them, kind of thing. Like all of a sudden that fad was over. And that's
Yeah. Now
where
they're
I
on the
feel
clearance
like,
pile.
well, exactly. And that's where now I feel like the pendulum kind of split in half and swung both ways, because like this whole maximum cushion thing is not going anywhere anytime soon. So that's what we've seen across the board for, I already see the product for 2026. And it's the same trends, same fads that are coming down the pipeline, 2 years out. But
Yeah.
also the big trend with Ultra. Ultra, the brand, is a really great shoe, flashy colors, really beautifully done aesthetically. Um, but they have the whole premise of a zero drop shoe. But also with that, the wide toe box. And with the wide toe box is, it doesn't look like a traditional tapered running shoe. It kind of swoops out and around. So what that's supposed to emulate as well are your toes just sit inside that toe box in a nice natural splayed position, not sort of crunched up like a traditional running shoe or shoes that we wear. Um, Now, that's the other reason why these brands like Ultra are really popular as well, because it just allows your foot to sit in there and people put it on and go, oh, the shirt is really good. My feet has space to breathe. I do feel like we see it lots. I do feel like people cram their foot into a shoe because they think that they're a size 9, but really they're actually a 9.5 wide. Or they measure to a 9 and they think that they
Mm.
have to go to a 9, but you actually have to upsize by a little bit. So when you put someone into a proper fitting shoe or give them the proper toe space around their forefoot, it's like you're like solving like world hunger in front of them. But it's just like you're putting them in a proper fitting shoe that their toes need to sit nicely and not be crunched. And we always use the comparison of like, people think like, oh, I have to have like my foot like in a soccer cleat or like a track spike, like that really tight wrap sort of shoe. But man, when you're pounding 160 times a minute, turning over, your feet need some kind of space and some kind of give because you're just gonna have really sore feet and blisters, and it gets really ugly from there. So the wide toe box stuff is a
Yeah.
trend right now for sure, and I think it's for good reason. I don't see that going anywhere anytime soon. People are seeming to like that a lot. One trend, and I mean this is outside of footwear. I know we're talking about footwear, so I mean, um, I don't know, there's not much else for trend right now per se. I think this max cushion thing is where it's at. I would say if I have to pin one big thing in the running shoe world, trend is max cushion. So everyone's trying to copy Hoka,
Yeah.
and I'll say
And
that out there. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, and I think too, with the those barefoot shoes that everybody was wearing for a few years there. I mean, people bought them once and, tried to run in them, tried to do mileage just for running in their shoes, got hurt and probably didn't buy another pair. Right? It would have been very few and far between runners that, were able to pick those up, integrate them properly, and to be able to continue to
yes,
run with them. You need to have the right feet for it and be kind of lucky in that department, I think. But then also to know how to properly rebuild your mileage and rebuild your strength in that type of minimalist shoe.
for sure. And I think that's where a lot of people get steered wrong or are misinformed because you go from a traditional shoe that say has an 8 millimeter drop and then you try to go to a zero. Well, what that does is essentially you got to imagine being pulled down on your Achilles into your heel, your calf muscle. So what happens often is people complain of really sore calves, really sore Achilles if they don't transition properly from a traditional drop shoe down to a zero. Because essentially that's what's happening. You're
Yeah.
being pulled down on your calf and your Achilles, and and then sometimes people go, "Oh, this shoe's not for me." Well, you kind of have to graduate down to that. You can't just all of a sudden put them on and go, "Oh yeah, these are gonna be amazing." So it varies for sure.
Yeah. And I guess you know, a lot of times people feel the pressure, feel like they should get into a more minimal shoe or get into a neutral shoe. Um, you know, because there is such a, sometimes that pressure in the running community of doing less. Like, oh, you need these big cushion shoes. Well, you don't need that. You should be in a minimalist. Or even with fueling and hydration, like, oh, you take gels on your runs. Well, you don't need to get by with less. And sort of this it's kind of mindset sometimes in the running community. Do you think that it's, a goal for people to have to get to the kind of most minimal or the least support with their shoe, or is that just absolutely not a thing that people should even be worried about?
I don't think it should be something that people are worried about. Because at the end of the day, it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. When it always goes back to what works for me doesn't work for you, and vice versa. And I don't think
Yeah.
it's something that you know, that works for everybody. And if you try to put yourself into that untraditional cookie cutter, and you're trying to fit yourself into a square, but you're actually a rectangle, what are you doing for yourself? You're not helping yourself in any regard, right? So there's just some people that right away off the hop know that no, those don't work for me, and no one should feel like coaxed or like harassed, not harassed, but bullied or thought to be like to go into that shoe category. Um, and that's the greatest thing is like when you're assessed properly and you get your foot assessed when you come into the store and you do the whole walk back and forth and look at your arches and feel your feet and all that kind of stuff. Um, all that plays a factor in the type of shoe that we bring out for you, big time. And those are the shoe potentials that could work for your foot. And anything outside of that is actually probably not appropriate. Like we wouldn't put somebody into a stability shoe if they didn't need a stability shoe. It doesn't make sense. You're now correcting something that's actually not a problem, or vice versa. We're not going to put you into a motion control shoe, like a heavier shoe that doesn't allow your foot to rotate left and right, if you're someone who doesn't need that. So having a proper assessment and a proper, 30-second gait analysis that we do in the shop is so vitally important. I can't say that enough. If you're looking for that zero
Yeah.
drop shoe and it works for you, well, by all means, we sell tons of Ultra at the store, tons and tons of Ultra for road, for trail, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But it just has to be appropriate for your foot, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's, if you're following someone or, online or someone who's really influential promoting a certain type of shoe or saying that people should be wearing a certain type of shoe, that's really not going to be helpful information for most of us.
Yes, exactly. It's like anything in this world. Like,
Yeah.
the influencers on social media that are
Yeah.
promoting a certain brand or certain product or shoe. It's the same thing. The
Yeah.
keyboard warriors on like Facebook or on Google on these forums that say, "Oh yeah, this is the best shoe," and it's like you go try that shoe
Yeah.
on. It's like, this is not the best shoe. This is gonna feel good on my foot. Well, there's reasons why it doesn't feel good on your foot. So
Yeah. Exactly. So you mentioned a pair of shoes lasting 500 miles or about 800 kilometers, but there's probably some variability with that, I would assume, unless they're specifically manufactured to last that amount of time, which you can let me know. But how would a runner maybe know that it's time to replace shoes? What would be some indications that it's time to go get a new pair or a couple of pairs?
yeah, great. That's a really great question. So yeah, like again, very loose rule of thumb: 500 miles, 800 kilometers. But yes, varying factors, and it kind of goes back to like how hard you are on your feet. If you're a big heel straker, are you someone who runs on their forefoot? Are you someone who specifically can only run or runs on trail or gravel, or do you run on clean sidewalk where without debris and that kind of stuff? So those few little extracurricular factors play a role into that for sure. But actual signs that,
Yeah.
hey, you know what, I think it's time to change on my shoes. Well, I think we're all on Strava, we're all on Garmin in some capacity. So track it that way if possible. Some cool features on there that you can put your shoes onto your runs and actually have a running total of the wear across all of your shoes. But outside of
Yeah.
that, some actual signs would be often people come to the store and go, yeah, last couple of runs I've had some sore knees. And before that, wasn't experiencing sore
Hmm.
knees or sore shin or whatever. Um, and then that's feedback from the shoe to your body. Essentially, what I have sore knees. Okay, well, probably time for a new pair of shoes. If you externally look at the shoe, because we can't look internally into the shoe, flip your shoes over, you can see your wear patterns. And often we do that as well. We love when people bring their shoes, their older shoes, or the shoes they're using, they're not running, into the store, so they can look at the bottom of the treads and go, okay, you are a heavy heel straker. You are someone who runs on the forefoot. You do roll off or come off on the left side of your foot or right side, whichever it is, because you can see the tread where it's worn on the bottom of the shoe. So that's a really big indicator as well. And now one thing that we always say is, if the shoe's like looking worn to like kind of used on the outside, it's probably shot on the inside, because internally it
Okay.
breaks down faster than externally. So that's a big thing as well.
That's a
Because sometimes
super
shoes
good thing to
can,
know.
yeah, yeah, because sometimes shoes can look good externally, but internally they're combusted down. There's no bubble wrap left to pop, essentially, in terms of cushion or foam and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
that's a great tip. I love that. All right.
Mhm.
So before we wrap up today's episode, do you have any final tips or advice or things that you want to share? You've already given us a ton of info today, shared lots of great information about your process and all kind of the do's and don'ts of picking out running shoes.
Mhm.
But is there anything else that you want to share with us before I let you go today?
Yeah. I honestly think that we all at one point start on this journey of running or buying those new shoes or trying on shoes. And it's at no one's fault or cost that sometimes the education piece isn't there. And that's what we really do pride ourselves on at City Park Runners, in terms of passing on this knowledge and educating people that there is a wide shoe for your forefoot or, wider foot. There is a shoe that helps you with your contrafactuatus. There is a corrective shoe that you don't need actually an orthotic, potentially. There are shoes, there are things out there that can help you without maybe you knowing. Um, and then another big piece that I say to everyone is that the biggest thing is what works for me doesn't work for you. And that's so true in the shoe world, because we carry 76 different models of female shoes and 76 different models of men's shoes for both road and trail. So we have
Wow.
a lot of selection in widths, and of forgot about people who have narrow feet. We have shoes for people who have narrow feet as well. So standard widths for women was 2A, B, and D is wide. And sometimes it goes to 2E. Men's standard width is D, 2E, 4E, and sometimes we bring in 6E if we need. So both ends of the spectrum, we carry, we stock, we supply. If we don't, we can order any kind of thing. So don't be intimidated going into any kind of place like this where, you're brand new to it or you're going for the information and the knowledge, because at the end of the day, that's what we're here for. We'll tell you all the information you should be hearing and knowing and understanding. And it's not just a thing of like, well, here's a couple of shoes, here's the color, here's the price, and that's it. That's what the big box stores we say do kind of thing. We're here to help you out from beginning to end. And I think our reputation and our reviews on Google speak for that. And it's there's lots of information out
Amazing.
there. So take it for what it is.
Yeah. And so, obviously it's great if people can come and see you in person. People who live locally in the area, live here in Winnipeg, can come and check you guys out in store. But do you also offer online shopping and shipping for people who are listening to the episode that don't happen to live in Winnipeg?
We do. Yeah. Great. Thanks for that call out. Yeah, we definitely do. We offer free shipping for anything over $199, which essentially is any pair of shoes will ship to you for free. In Winnipeg, we do local delivery. And then also, really, like another thing in our customer service bucket is we have more and more, as of recent, the last 6 months, we've been going to people's potential houses or care homes who can't come to us. And we've had a couple elder customers at, say, Shaftesbury Retirement Home, or who live in a house just close by, and we go, you know what, we'll come to you, measure you up, we'll set you, because we understand that A, footwear is really important. B, we don't want you just throwing on a pair of like cheap Skechers from Costco and your feet getting even worse. I don't mind coming to you and making sure that you're being properly fitted into the proper shoe. So we try to be accommodating to our customers in any realm possible, kind of thing, accessible in any realm possible.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So tell us where people can find you, your location, your Instagram, your website. Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, so our website is www.cityparkrunners.com. Our Instagram handle is at cityparkrunnersYWG. That's important because it's still a City Park Runners. That account was deactivated many months ago, or years ago, but it still shows up. So City Park Runners YWG. And we're located at 2091 Portage Avenue, which for people who live in Winnipeg and they know their ice cream spots, that's just west of Sergeant Sunday. And we always reference that as a key point because most people know where that famous ice cream shop is in Winnipeg. So just one block.
It's so funny because I do too. That's the exact, like when I'm heading down to the store there and it's like, oh, City Park Runners, where is that? Oh, you know where Sergeant Sunday is? And everyone's like, yeah, it's right by there. So that's hilarious.
Infamous
landmark. That is the landmark.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
We're open Monday to Friday, 10 to 6, and on Saturdays and Sundays, 10 to 4. So we're open 7 days a week, and we're finding that, we have a heavy flow of traffic now with the springtime coming around. So we're open 7 days a week to, accommodate to our customers and be there for the community. So
wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I know how busy you are with the store and everything else you have on the go. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time today to chat with me, tell our listeners all about shoes, what to look for. And I think the most important takeaway from this episode is that you need to get fitted and get that proper assessment. A pair of running shoes is going to work for you. And when you find the right pair, you're going to feel like Cinderella, and it's just going to be this beautiful fit, and your feet are going to feel great and your body's going to feel great. And, we can't guarantee any PRs, but at the very least, you're going to have a lot more fun. So thank you so much, Jonathan. It was a pleasure chatting with you today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. This was a really big honor. So thank you again.
All right. That is it for today's episode, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.